I'm John Palatiello, the Executive Director of the Maryland Society of Surveyors, and assisting me in this session is Ebony Gellis, who handles our marketing communications in my firm and for MSS. And the purpose of this session today is really in two parts. I'm going to spend a little time, Ebony and myself, in talking a little bit about defining public relations, talking about what it is, how you can use it in your firm, ways that it can be integrated into other things that you're doing, and perhaps give you some tips on things that you might want to implement in your own practices. The second part is going to be much more interactive, and we're going to try to get information from you. And we're going to capture this both in writing it down as well as we're videotaping this session so that we have a record of it. And the reason for that is to try to gather some information that we can use so that as the staff of MSS, we can be working with our Public Relations Committee and do much more of a public education and outreach to help enhance the image of surveyors and the image of the profession of surveying. If part of that is a better public understanding of what it is that you all do, if it helps to increase your fees, those are not bad things. Those are certainly desirable. I have been fascinated by this subject for quite a long period of time. This is a study that I was involved in for ACSM back in the 1980s. In about the 1984-1985 time frame, ACSM hired a firm here in Baltimore called Hollander Cohen Associates. And they did 2 public opinion surveys for us by telephone. The first one, we used the POB subscription list, and they did a telephone interview of 500 surveyors that were randomly but statistically sampled from across the country. And in that telephone poll, data was collected about the work that surveyors do, who the clients of surveyors are, and what surveyors' own self-image is. What do they think of the profession? And then based on the input that we received as to who the clients are, a second study was done. And again, telephone interviews were conducted with people in major client groups that were identified by the surveyors in the first study as being the major stakeholder and client groups of surveyors. I'll come back to that in a little bit because I don't want to prejudice the outcome or plant a seed that's going to bias what you provide in feedback. But it was a very interesting analysis. Unfortunately, ACSM never then took the next step and really implemented an aggressive public relations program to try to implement some changes in public attitudes based on the research that was done. It would also be fascinating to me if we can do a study like this again today and see how attitudes have changed, both within the surveying profession and among clients. Hollander Cohen Associates was a very interesting firm to work with. Sidney Hollander, who is the founder of the firm, is now deceased, but he was a colleague and a contemporary of George Gallup, and they actually invented the statistically scientific methodology for doing opinion research and coming up with statistical ways of assuring the accuracy and reliability. And of course now with politics and everything else, we see polls every day, and all of that is based on a lot of the foundational work that Mr. Hollander did. So let's start just by putting this particular session and the concept of public relations in context. Public relations should not be confused with other methodologies, other tools, other things that you might do in your firm. Public relations should not be confused with advertising. Advertising is a means of communicating with users or potential users of a product or service through messages paid for by those who send them and are intended to inform or influence people who receive them. So advertising is a paid form of communication by you, the individual, or the company that's advertising a product or a service. Sales is the process of selling, pardon my typo, products or services to generate income and revenue. Marketing is the activity, the set of institutions and processes for creating, communicating, delivering, and exchanging offerings that have a value for customers, clients, partners, and society at large. So it is a general form of communications, particularly with regard to a product or a service. Branding is a relatively new term, and that broadly is a product, is anything that can be offered to a market to satisfy a want or a need, including physical goods, services, experiences, events, persons, places, properties, organizations, information, ideas. And a brand is a name, a term, a design, a symbol, a logo, or any other feature that identifies one seller's goods or service as distinct from those of others. So the MSS logo would be an example of branding. And branding is endowing products and services within the power of the brand. So it's identifying, for example, the logo with a particular company, a particular product, a particular service. Public relations, which is what we're primarily going to talk about today, although components of the other terms that I just defined could certainly be part of it. But public relations is a management function to organize information, messages, opinions, and other communications to create favorable public opinions among certain audiences. Now, the general public could be a certain audience, but by and large, public relations is about very well-defined and targeted audiences. And that's really what we're going to talk about here today. I'm going to turn it over to Ebonique because she is a big proponent and a fan of a book that came out within the last couple of years called Zombie Loyalists. I've done a class for MSS twice on marketing, and one of the things that I emphasize in marketing is something that led me to the book that Ebonique is an enthusiast for. And that is that it is much more cost effective and you have a much higher hit rate in getting repeat business from an existing client as opposed to trying to develop and groom a new client or steal a client from the surveyor sitting next to you. And to turn it over to Ebonique to talk about some of the highlights from this book talks about the fact that the way to keep a client is by building loyalty and providing the most extraordinary customer service or client service that they won't even think of going to another surveyor, that they just stick with you. And that's the kind of clients you want. So with that, Ebonique, I'll turn it over to you, and you're going to walk through a couple of slides about your favorite book.
Yes, this is one of my favorite books because it emphasizes being pleasant, and everyone likes a pleasant face and pleasant people. And even if you do something wrong, just being pleasant makes people want to follow you and want to do want to work with you. The idea behind Zombie Loyalists, behind the catchy title, is that you want to infect your current customers by biting them with great customer service, and they simplify it as bring random amazement into normal situations. So when you're with someone, when you're with a client or a surveyor, it's much easier to have a neighbor or a best friend recruit you to use their services than it would be for even Michael Jordan to come and try to recruit them. When your best friend offers a service, offers you a suggestion, you're much more likely to use it than even someone amazing. So the big thing behind this is just to keep your current clients. Sorry, I'm nervous. It's my first time. Many companies fail because they are more interested in cultivating new clients rather than keeping their current clients happy. So you want to keep your revenue base. You want to keep your current engineering firms or whoever you're working with, you want to keep them. So you need to always emphasize how can you make your current customers, clients happy. And as I said earlier, your current clients should be so happy about your service that they recommend your service to their friends, family, and coworkers naturally. You don't even have to tell them to do it because they have such a good time working with you as a surveyor that they wouldn't even think about looking at the competitor, whether they're cheaper or not. They just like you. They want to see you doing the work, and they don't want to see anyone else do it. And then communicate your public relations with current clients. So when they think of surveying, they think of you. And you become this subject matter expert. So even when you want to get so good at this that even when you have so many clients that you're the one that they even if your schedule is so booked you can't do their service, they still ask you, who can do this service for me now? So that they come to you and they trust you more than they trust anyone else. And this was a really funny statistic on the book. It said 80% of your customer service, but only 8% of customers agree. So you need to learn about your customers and provide superior customer service. So value every client as a person rather than a commodity. So a lot of times, a lot of companies, they don't see the person as a person, and so they talk to them as like, how much money I'm going to get from you, but that should be an afterthought. These people are people, and you all have friends that you don't know why you're still friends with them, but for some reason there's something about them, the personal aspect that keeps you with them. So that's something that, and then here's another quote from the book. Customer service is no longer about telling people how great you are. It's about producing amazing moments in time and letting these moments become the focal point of how amazing you are, told not by you, but by the customer you just thrilled. So you want your customer or your client to rave about you so that you no longer have to do it anymore. And just like some people are Pepsi or Coca-Cola loyalists, you want them to be loyal about your surveying company over all others. Then the book also talks about a lot of times you'll have your boss might yell at you because you had an unsatisfactory moment with a client or customer, and that's going to happen. Sometimes people have bad days and they take it out on you, the surveyor, and so you just need to continue to be happy and good people regardless of unsatisfactory things happening, and don't let anyone rain on your parade. So the book says you're going to screw up. It happens to everyone, as we said before. So the key is what you do next. And I love this example. Domino's Pizza admitted it had a problem in 2010 when customers' complaints came in about their horrible pizza and bad customer service. When they publicly admitted their mistakes and came up with a solution, their stock grew up by 400% after listening to customers publicly apologizing and improving their service. So that's one of the biggest keys of the book, was that just realizing that your mistake couldn't be a helpful thing. If you can take that mistake and show them that we're all flawed. That's the nature of human reality. But if you explain to them how you're going to do better next time in a humble and human way, they're more likely to use you next time because they realize that in their own company they've made mistakes. So you need to approach them in a way that builds that trust.
Okay. Well, I can tell you with a last name like Palatiello, I still think Domino's Pizza is like cardboard, and I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. It's, you know, you have to have truth in advertising, and to call that pizza to me is not truth in advertising. Anyway, so what are some of the things that you can do to have a public relations program, to get a message out, to convey to your clients and to target audiences who you are, what you do, the quality of the service that you provide? And these are just a couple of examples that are more new media, social media, things, you know, newsletters are now even MSS now. We have an e-newsletter instead of a hard copy newsletter. Very rarely do firms have brochures anymore or things of that nature. Everything's going digital, everything's going to new media, social media, so those are just a couple of examples. There are still traditional marketing and communications tools that you can use, and other kinds of marketing vehicles. Branding, your logo we talked about, sponsorships. That's something, I mean, obviously I have a conflict of interest as the executive director of MSS, but you know, our sponsorship program in MSS is catching on. A lot of our members are sponsors at our conferences. Well, why would you do that? If you're a surveying firm and you're being a sponsor at a surveying conference, why would you do that? Anybody have an idea? Why would it be advantageous for your firm to sponsor here with all of your competitors?
Support the profession and possibly gain new employees.
Very good, very good. So elevate your profile, create the image that you're a desirable firm to work for so that when you're out recruiting, people know who you are. Good.
I was going to say, if you have a specialty or a niche where other surveyors might need your service, they're reminded of it when you're at a conference like this. And
Exactly. Mike's firm AI Data has a table out here passing out all their goodies because they partner with a lot of surveyors. They have a niche where they can partner with other surveyors. James?
I was going to say similar. Partnering is becoming more of a common thing.
Right. A firm came to me once and said that they wanted to be a sponsor and raise their profile within a surveying society because they're on a growth pattern. They're out there and they're going to start buying up other firms. Well, again, they want to raise their profile. They want to create a branding and an image of it being a desirable firm and positioning themselves as being someone that other firms, when they're selling, might want to be bought out by. So there's a variety of reasons why sponsoring even here is a desirable thing. Reprints. This is something that I think people extraordinarily underutilize, and that is if you have an article that you write and goes in any kind of publication, or you're interviewed or quoted in an article anywhere, that should not be the end of it. That should be the beginning of your communication strategy. You post it on Facebook, you put it up on LinkedIn, you send it in an email to a client list, you have it in your booth when you have booths, whether it's hard copy or digital. Leveraging that and using reprints or sharing of it electronically is a great way to really leverage getting placement of an article in some media. Presentations at conferences, putting on your own corporate webinars, having brown bag lunches. Can I tell your story, Steve, that you told me? CPJ does great business with regard to the ALTA surveys, and Steve once told me when the new NSPS ALTA standard came out, they started holding brown bag lunches with their clients. Their clients that come to them regularly with regard to getting ALTA surveys. And they educated them on the new standard. And what CPJ needs to do to comply with the standard and what the client is going to get, what kind of data, what kind of results, what kind of solutions. And it's all in the name of educating the client, but it's built-in marketing. It's building that CPJ as a subject matter expert on Alta surveys. I thought that was a great example of doing what I'm suggesting here. And then your logo, putting it everywhere you possibly can, on your shirts, on your brochures if you still have one, on your website, on your vehicles, so that when someone sees that logo, they'd immediately know it's your firm. It becomes identifiable. When I've done my marketing class, I use a couple of examples, and one is the Nike swoosh. And how identifiable is that? Everybody in America knows what that is. That's number one. Number two, what does that swoosh say about sneakers or athletic clothes? What does that tell you that the company that has that swoosh makes sneakers or athletic apparel? Nothing. But it is an identifiable logo. The other thing that strikes me is how many surveying firms, how many state surveying societies have logos that just scream yesterday. When I became the executive director of MSS, one of the first things, those of you in the room that are on the board, one of the first things I said was, can we do a new logo? Stand up, George. Turn around, let everybody see.
Okay.
So George has a shirt on with the old logo. Now, does that say a contemporary, high-tech, forward-looking profession or society?
I'm retired.
We excuse George for that reason. So, your logo doesn't have to say survey, but it should be something that is identifiable, and that's the branding of your firm. News releases, they still work. How many here do news releases about your firm? Okay, only a handful. An old quote that I once learned from Satchel Paige, it ain't bragging if it's so. So if there's something newsworthy that you're doing and you're putting the word out, it's not bragging. It's public information, it's public education, it's letting people know about news, developments, improvements, things that are happening in your firm. So I like to call them news releases and not press releases because they're not just going to the press. They may be going to electronic media, they may be going to radio stations, television stations, a variety of other types of media other than the old press. Where do you send it? You develop a targeted media list. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later in the context of MSS and the profession at large, but it ought to be the same thing with regard to one that you develop for your firm. When should you issue a news release? These are just a couple of examples. When you expand and have a new hire, put out a news release announcing that this person has joined your firm. And when I say a news release, we are talking about things like posting it on Facebook, putting it on LinkedIn, Twitter, and all of the other non-traditional new social media as well. When you've been retained or won a major project, particularly if it's going to be something high profile. It's a great reason to go out and say that you've been retained for the widening of 695. You've been retained by the State Highway Administration. You're going to do all the surveying for the widening of 695 around Baltimore. That's a pretty significant project, as an example. If you've expanded with a new line of service, you've acquired a mobile mapping system, or you've acquired a drone, you're expanding your services in some way. Mergers and acquisitions. If you've bought another firm, you've merged with another firm, a major expansion in that regard. And when you do major speeches and presentations, send out a news release indicating that you've done that. Why is that helpful? It goes back to what Ebonique talked about. You're establishing yourself as a subject matter expert in your field. So, a public relations plan for your surveying firm. Research target markets, identify targeted current and prospective clients, identify your target audiences, select the proper media or the most appropriate or the most effective and efficient media, develop your messages, implement your strategy, and then create benchmarks or metrics to measure your success and your progress. You know, maybe the first time you do it, you get 10 people that like your post on Facebook. Maybe the next time it's gone to 20%. Well, you've now doubled your success rate. So even little benchmarks like that are great ways to measure your success. So, everything that we just walked through can be applied to an individual surveying firm. But everything that we just talked about can also be applied to MSS. And it's our desire to start developing and implementing a program where on behalf of all of you, we are doing more aggressive public relations outside of the membership to enhance the image of the surveying profession and you as members of the profession and MSS. Those of you in the room who are on the board know that when we went through a strategic planning process for MSS, I challenged everyone with this question, and TJ is going to remember this because the next slide is a graphic I think that TJ put together for me. But if someone asked you to name a famous surveyor, how would you respond?
George Washington.
Very good. Next.
Anybody on Mount Rushmore?
Well, 3 out of 4. 3 surveyors and the other guy.
Teddy's qualified.
Teddy's qualified? Okay.
SBS now.
Okay. Well, let me tell you a story. My firm also is the National Government Affairs Representative for NSPS. And the NSPS board had a meeting concurrent with the Kansas and Missouri surveyors in Overland Park, Kansas. This is about 3 or 4 years ago. I invited the local congressman from Kansas to come and speak to the NSPS board. And I knew the congressman. John Bird on my staff, who's our lobbyist, did a whole briefing memo for the congressman in advance, so he knew everything about things that he had done with us and a little bit about NSPS and what have you. The day of his presentation to NSPS arrived. We're out in Overland Park, Kansas. I met him in the lobby of the hotel and started escorting him down the escalators into the ballroom where this meeting was going to take place. And so the congressman said to me, what's the big issue with these guys, John? And I said, well, right now in surveying it's workforce development. He said, why is that? And I said, well, the average age of a surveyor in the United States is 58. We have people retiring, dying, and leaving the profession at a much faster rate than younger people are coming in. And I said, you know, all of these programs that the government has for STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, really aren't helping us to attract young people into the profession. And he said to me, that's interesting. He said, so who would be a famous surveyor that I would know? And I stopped for a second and I said, well, the joke in surveying is Mount Rushmore is 3 surveyors and the other guy. Washington, Jefferson, and Lincoln were surveyors. And the congressman said to me, so they have an image problem, huh? Well, I thought that was very telling, because in my mind, if you ask the average American about surveying, you're going to get one of 2 answers. You're either going to get Washington, Jefferson, and Lincoln, or it's the guy on the side of the road in the orange vest that's looking through the instrument. That's what people think a surveyor is. I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding in agreement. So, here's TJ's wonderful graphic. So what we want to do is take the image from the past to something more high-tech. I actually wrote an article, I think it was still Professional Surveyor before they went to XYHT, and the title of it was, It's Time to Bury the Dead Presidents. And it's time for us to get beyond this and get to projecting a very modern, high-tech, forward-looking profession. So when we went through and did the strategic plan for MSS, it was this image that at least I had in mind as I facilitated this and worked with a number of you in the room in developing the strategic plan. And it was all about a strategic plan by which MSS as an organization and surveying as a profession moves into the future, is more forward-looking, has an enhanced professional image, is representative of a very modern, high-tech, forward-looking profession. So, ask a question of you in the audience. Here are two columns with two different types of occupations. All right, everybody can see that? How many would put surveying in the left category? How many would put surveying in the right-hand category? How many are already asleep? It's the problem with being right after lunch. Okay. This list came out of the U.S. Department of Labor's list of apprenticeable occupations. This comes out of federal Labor Department regulations that define professions. I have I'm not going to go there. Some of you may know what I was going to say, and I'm not going to embarrass the individual. Only one time in all the presentations that I've done with this have I ever had a surveyor say, surveyors are in this column. He's not here today, so I won't. This is the definition. Those of you who are business owners know what the Fair Labor Standards Act is, right? That's what defines a salaried employee versus an hourly employee, who you have to pay overtime to, who gets paid based on an annual salary, and so on. So these are the standards of what is a professional employee, what is a learned profession. So in order to be considered a learned professional employee under federal law and regulations, the employee must be compensated on a salary or fee basis at a rate of not less than $455 a week, which is a salary of $23,660. Does a surveyor meet that? Yep. I would say most field crew technicians meet that, right? The employee's primary duty must be the performance of work requiring advanced knowledge, defined as work which is predominantly intellectual in character, and which includes work requiring the consistent exercise of discretion and judgment. Is that a surveyor?
Yep.
Anybody vote no? The advanced knowledge must be in a field of science or learning. Yes? The advanced knowledge must be customarily acquired by a prolonged course of specialized intellectual instruction. Debate? Yes, no? Somewhat? We're working towards it? Maybe? Okay. Department of Labor regulations. Fields of science or learning include law, medicine, theology, accounting, actuarial, computation, engineering, architecture, teaching, various types of physical, chemical, and biological sciences, pharmacy, and other occupations that have a recognized professional status and are distinguishable from the mechanical arts or skilled trades, with a knowledge of this type, but is not in a field of science or learning. So, mechanical arts or skilled labor. Yes? That's the distinction. So, again, most surveyors I talk to say, yes, we're a profession. We're professionals. We are part of a profession. There is a healthy debate, is surveying part of a broad field of engineering? There are some people who say yes, some people who say no. Separate and distinct profession. separate and distinct profession within the broad field of engineering. There are some states, Pennsylvania, for example, comes to mind, where even the state law definition of the practice of surveying says the practice of surveying is the branch of the field of engineering in which, so some states actually have it in state law. In creating a positive public image for surveying, it's important that everyone is using the proper terminology. I don't think I have in here the Pogo cartoon, but we all remember Pogo said, "We have met the enemy and it is us." So as you're messaging and doing public relations for your firm, apprentice. Well, we've already said surveying is not an apprenticeable occupation. Many of you were at a general membership meeting, what was it, a year ago, with Kelly Scholes, the secretary of DLLR, and she started talking about how they're offering apprenticeship programs that MSS ought to jump on board and get part of. And we had a very polite but pretty heated discussion with her about, no, we are not an apprenticeable occupation. If you want workforce development or training or career enhancement programs for something like surveying, we need to come up with a term other than apprenticeship, because that's not appropriate. If for no other reason, whether it's perception or reality, how many people in this room associate an apprenticeship with a labor union? A labor union. Is surveying unionized across the country for the most part? No. That's the problem, I think, in the year 2018 with the term apprenticeship. It is too much perceived as back in the 1940s and 50s as being a labor union activity. I had a conversation yesterday with a fellow at the U.S. Department of Labor about starting some new terminology for their worker training and workforce development programs and moving away from an apprenticeship and coming up with some new terminology for things like surveying, where we have workforce development needs, but apprentice is not what it should be. And I make the point, do you ever hear your doctor or your lawyer talk about when he or she was an apprentice? No, because an apprenticeship is not the training beyond education that you get to become a professional. You never hear a doctor or a lawyer talk about when they were an apprentice. Customers. Now, Ebonique was quoting from a book, so she was using the word customer. It's somewhat interchangeable, but industries and retailers have customers, professionals have clients. And so if you're trying to project the image that you're a professional, use the term client to discuss who it is that retains your services. Industry. I don't understand why ACEC now talks about the engineering industry. I think they are doing a tremendous disservice to their members. They don't talk about the profession of engineering anymore, if you look in all of their literature. Fortunately, you don't hear a lot of people say the surveying industry. And we're very meticulous in our office in anything that we put out in any communication in the name of MSS, that we never use the term industry. When Ebonique first came on board with me, she got a lot of my red pen on her proof saying, no, Ebonique, we do not use industry. If you're not, I mean, it's no fault of hers. She was new to this job, new to this community. She didn't understand, but it's important to distinguish between an industry and a profession. This is one of my, this is the fingernails on the chalkboard with me. Vendor. You actually go to the dictionary. A vendor is one who vends, and vend means to sell, especially as a hawker or peddler, and to sell by means of vending machines. How many of you have survey plats in a vending machine in a shopping mall? Raise your hand. All right, so you're not a vendor. And so, politely correct people when they refer to it. Government procurement people love the term vendor. Everybody's a vendor. If you're competing for a government contract, they consider everybody a vendor. It's a misuse of the term. It's rather derogatory for a professional, and we certainly should not be using that term, if not also correcting others when they misuse the term. Product. Heard Steve talk about a product today. Does Maryland have a sales tax?
Yes.
It applies to what? Products. Does it apply to services?
No, not yet.
So don't. Not yet. So don't call what you do a product, because you could be hanging yourself, because if your invoice says an Alta survey product, or products including plats, aerial photographs, and so on, if you get audited, remember John Palatiello warned you, you're going to get hit for not collecting sales tax, because the state of Maryland is going to say, well, you admitted yourself here that it was a product. So always use the term services in your brochure if you have one, on your website, in your invoicing, on your business cards. Yes?
Products also, I guess, connotate warranties or guarantees. And I guess most of our professional liability insurance policies will not cover a guarantee or warranty.
Excellent
They're
point.
excluded.
Excellent point. You are absolutely right. I've talked to Justin Klein and others about this. You are 100% absolutely correct, and I'll briefly touch on that in an upcoming slide. But that is another reason why that if you are purporting in the market that you are producing a product and selling a product to a customer, you may be voiding your liability insurance. Another one of my least favorite terms is bidding. Professionals don't bid for their services. They compete, they submit proposals, they submit qualifications or offers. You don't bid. So the misuse of terminology from a public image, public relations standpoint by the surveying profession itself can result in harmful consequences for the individual practitioners and professional firms and the profession at large with regard to procurement, employment classification, professional liability, university accreditation, tax, sales tax. If you're in a product business, you can't use cash accounting. You have to use accrual accounting. At any point in time in your firm, how much of your revenue is outstanding in accounts receivable? Sometimes it could be, what, 30%? If you're using accrual accounting, you got to pay tax on that at the end of the year. Cash accounting, you don't have to put it on your books until you actually receive it. So in order to preserve your ability to do cash accounting for tax purposes, make sure that you're talking about a professional service, not a product. And of course, it has an impact on public relations and the public image that we're conveying as well. So use care in describing yourself and your practice, as that will influence what your clients and the public thinks of all of us in this profession. Surveying profession needs a strategy to mobilize its members, educate its respective organizations, and work together to advance and promote professionalism and regain professional recognition for its members. And that's what the effort that we want to embark upon here is all about. the strategic plan for MSS as a group. These were the officers and a couple of past presidents. Raise your hand. We were up there at where Bill Orsinger's wife works, the
Art Center.
Art Center, thank you, in Frederick. Who was there? Raise your hand. You were all part of that. Okay, so about a half dozen of you. So what we did is we brainstormed a description of what surveying really is. It's not the 3 dead presidents or the 4 dead presidents on Mount Rushmore. It's not the guy or gal on the side of the road with the orange vest looking through the instrument. But surveying today is a modern profession that utilizes and applies state-of-the-art technology, UAVs, LiDAR, CAD, scanning, total stations, applies the law, applies mathematics to collect and apply data to solve problems and provide solutions for clients. Anyone disagree with that? Anyone using anything like this in your firm to tell people who you are and what you do? So this should be the new paradigm. We all agree this is accurate, but we don't use it. So this is what we all should be talking about as we're describing the profession of surveying to our clients and the public.
I noticed early on, when UAV technology first came out, UASs, and we specifically decided that we weren't going to use the term drones because they had a negative connotation in the military, whatever it was. But I've noticed over the last year that our
We've lost that battle.
profession,
We
we
lost
backed
that
off of
battle.
that quite a bit.
We've lost that battle, yeah. The AUVSI, which is the big association of all of the UAS manufacturers and big service firms, one year at their convention, the password to get into their Wi-Fi at the convention was "don't use drones." So every reporter who came in that wanted to use their Wi-Fi had to log in by saying "don't use drones." But even they may not use the term. Actually, my wife Sally and I have this debate all the time, and she said, "John, you've lost that battle. Everybody calls them drones." I would agree it's a negative connotation. People think of it as military, and people think of that as an invasion of privacy. But I still use the term UAV or UAS a lot. I try not to use drones, but it's, that's, to use one of my favorite expressions, that toothpaste is out of the tube, and you can't get it back in.
John?
Yes?
So in professional terms, we use SUAS, that's what the FAA actually
Right. Small
uses, yeah.
unmanned aircraft system.
I don't think drones has a negative connotation anymore. I mean, it did, and we avoided that, but I think the general public now sees it as the toys our kids are getting at Christmas.
Right. Yeah, the new technology. I think you're right.
I'd also say on TV, I don't know if you browse around enough, there's that drones racing league.
Mm-hmm.
There's an entire league of that kind
Sport.
of stuff,
Yeah.
sport-wise,
Yeah.
so. In that connotation, if you push that message, it detaches itself from the military connotation.
Surveyors again contribute to the community and to the society through environmental protection, economic growth, preservation of property rights, data for decision-making, protecting public health, welfare, and safety, providing a foundation for engineering, infrastructure, and construction. Again, anybody disagree with that? Is that an accurate description of surveying? Is that terminology and a description that we use every day? No, perhaps we should. That should be part of the paradigm, part of the description, particularly with younger people today. I mean, if you are part of environmental protection, you're pretty cool. And surveyors are certainly part of environmental protection. Yes, we're part of development and construction, but also, whether it's wetlands, tree save areas, a variety of other things, surveyors have a role on the environmental side of things as well. And I would argue that all of these things, if you put to a public opinion poll, would score pretty high as things that people are in favor of. Career in surveying. again, these were things brainstormed by the folks who raised their hand before that were in this session. Why a career in surveying? It's rewarding and fulfilling. Salaries for survey crews and technicians are above the overall national per capita annual income average. A member of a survey crew makes more than the typical American. That's true when we find out from you what you pay members of survey crews. Compare it to the Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics data on what the typical per capita income is in America. Income for licensed professional surveyors is generally more than $70,000 a year, and the principal owner and a partner can typically earn a six-figure salary. How often do we go out and say that to folks and to young people, other than Brian with his workforce development work? I will tell you, those of you that were at our fall conference last October, when we had the panel of those kids that were in Brian's program, this had an impression on those kids. You mean I can make that kind of money by choosing a career in surveying? Where do I sign up? Because we finally went out and told them.
Good point, John, is we sometimes get discouraged by the money that we make. We feel we don't make enough necessarily, and I tend to agree with that. I think we should all make more, but to a lot of people out there, to the general public, like you said, those kids, those numbers were impressive. That caught their attention right away. And so there is a substantial portion of the population, the young population, that would be attracted by that. So, they aren't bad numbers.
Excuse me, John.
And-
Can you go back to the previous slide?
Sure.
Thank you.
So this is on a cocktail napkin, a group of surveyors together one morning. Didn't I pass out a piece of paper and say, just anonymously write down, what would be your number for this and what would be your number for this? And somebody in the room, I forget who it was, calculated it and came up with the average of everybody in the room. So this was just to give us something. I wouldn't hang my hat on this. We might want to do a salary survey to get something.
I pulled something from POB, they do their annual salary survey. When I did a presentation for the Ag Teachers Conference, and it's actually across the country, it's closer to 85,000 a year.
That $70,000 number is more in line with what a moderately skilled technician was now.
Okay, good feedback. Good feedback. Excellent. All right. And surveying is part of a broader geospatial profession with jobs in a variety of environments, including outdoors, but also in an office, in a computer lab. There are other career paths in the field of surveying or in a geospatial field that one can pursue. It doesn't have to be going out in the field all the time. So our challenge is to go from the dead presidents to projecting a surveying profession that's future-looking, that is modern, dynamic, provides benefits to society, is fulfilling, and is financially and personally rewarding. Again, it's a new paradigm. It's a new way of describing what surveying is. And it's honest, it's truthful. We're not making something up. As I went through this, when I went through these bullets, none of you disagreed. None of you said, no, that's not what surveying is. So it really is reflective of the times and the status of surveying. I think collectively, we just don't do a good job of going out and telling that to the public or telling that to our clients. And that's what we're going to take the next hour to do, and to accept that challenge of going from this to this. So let's talk about some misperceptions. Ebony, can I ask you to take notes on the flip chart
Sure.
and capture what the class provides us in input. So let's start. What do you think are the misperceptions that either the general public or specifically your clients or the industries or professions or the groups that your clients belong to have about surveying? What are those misperceptions?
I hear this a bit from the people that I work with. I do a lot of boundary surveys. They think it's easy.
Okay.
They just see it's out there for a short time and they think, oh, that's easy.
So they don't understand the complexity of surveying. Okay, very good.
I think a location survey is a boundary survey.
Okay, and a location survey is a boundary survey.
They don't think there's a value to surveying one.
Okay. Hold on, wait until I recognize you because I'm going to go a little slower so that Ebony can keep up with us because we do want to capture this.
For the most part, we're a necessary evil in the development process.
Okay. Yes, sir.
One thing we hear the most from our clients is it only takes 3 clicks of the button to prepare the plat. So why are you charging all that money?
Well, I was just
Arrived at that number.
I was just going to ask this the next question. Is there the perception that you cost too much?
Yes.
And then we take too long.
Okay. Why does it take so long to do something that's so easy? They don't understand the complexity of what goes in. Yeah. Sir?
A lot of times when the surveyor shows up, someone thinks that they're there to take their land or part of their land or something like that.
Associated with a dispute of some sort.
Yeah. Or the state or something like that.
Or future development that they don't want to see?
Yeah.
Steve?
They think we know where the property lines already are.
Okay. So it's an unnecessary evil. Yes, sir.
Actually had the conversation, as I call it, when a prospective client calls on the phone, and you gotta give them survey 101 over the phone, that we really don't know what we're doing because we don't agree with each other. And that how can you hardly call that a profession when it's more art than it is science.
Did you ask that person if they've ever gotten
Oh, it's been people, it hasn't been person.
No, I know, but when that person calls you and says that to you, you ask them if they've ever gone to another doctor and asked for a second medical opinion?
You know, it's tough giving survey 101. I know I'm not the only one.
Hey, trust me, we get, even at the MSS office, we get those phone calls. I just got a price proposal from the surveyor and he wants $1,000 to come out and do a location survey. Well, you know, by the time the guy comes in the morning, turns on the lights, you know, the cost of his education, the cost of his equipment, he gets in his vehicle, he comes to your property, does some research. Don't you think he's incurred $1,000 in expenses already before he even goes out and starts? I mean, I have that conversation with people every week. So I feel your pain. Okay, other misperceptions.
A lot of people wonder why they need a survey when they've got GIS.
There was a big issue in Virginia about 3 years ago because there was a boundary dispute between two counties on where the county line was. And so they got one of their legislators to introduce a bill that says the property line is where it says in the county GIS. Virginia surveyors were able to get that bill amended. Anything else?
John, I was gonna say, folks think it's sort of like an intangible, unnecessary cost. You know, they don't really realize what's behind the scenes, and I think we need to educate them.
Okay, so an intangible, okay.
You know, you mean it's gonna cost $850 to drive 4 pens in?
Good. Okay. I'm gonna jump ahead for a minute. Who was it that said necessary evil? When these studies were done, I'll give you a little head start. One of the leading responses from surveyors was exactly what you said. Our clients think that what we do is a necessary evil. That developer, it is an absolutely essential part of the projects that I work on. I can't live without my surveyor. Huge difference between the self-image that a surveyor has and the value that your client had. That was 1985, but excellent point. Okay. Education. What do you think the image of a surveyor is with regard to education?
Kind of off on a tangent here, our first line to the public is our field crew. And if our field crew is sloppy and not presenting themselves very well, there's a lot of assumptions made about what surveying crews do, who they are, their education. So under education, if your field crew is not presenting you well to the public, there's a lot that the public assumes.
So let's step back to misperceptions, or misconceptions, or misperceptions. How many of you think that your clients view field personnel as surveyors? Yes? Let me ask it a different way. How many of you believe that your client understands the difference between you as a professional surveyor and your field crews? They don't understand that. So that's another misperception, is the difference between a field technician and a field crew and the professional who's ultimately in responsible charge of that work. Correct? That's a misperception? Okay, good.
I disagree slightly with that, only in that I think most clients actually understand who the real surveyor is and the value the real surveyor brings, and even the education behind that. I think the general public, people that don't consume surveying services on a general basis, are the ones that see the field crew and judge more based on that.
Okay. In the 1985 study, 52% of clients view the surveyor as field personnel, 43% view the surveyor as the professional who manages the field technicians. Now again, that was 30 years ago, but it's interesting. 78% of clients in this study said that the survey that they get is a valuable part of the projects they work on. 14% said it's a necessary expense. What level of education do you think your clients believe the typical surveyor has?
Define typical surveyor.
Taking an average of the level of education of surveyors across the country, the American surveyor.
What we present in the field, it would be a high school education.
Show of hands, how many of you think that your clients view the surveyor as having achieved as the highest level of education, high school education? So only one or two, three, okay? How many of you believe that your clients view a surveyor as having someone who's attained a 2-year degree in college,
At least.
at least? So one or two. How many of you think, go ahead.
Most of my clients use surveyor and engineer in land development interchangeably. So your next question goes to college educated. They're absolutely convinced that engineers are college educated, and then they use the term surveyor and engineer interchangeably.
Yeah, but this is public, not client.
We go to the public, I agree. We go to the general public versus clients that are developers, builders, public agencies. General publics, absolutely, I'm back at the high school level.
Yeah.
That's a perception issue.
Absolutely.
I would disagree a little bit. I would say if I was trying to remove myself from being a surveyor and just being someone who's walking down the street and I pass a construction site and I see them showing up in the middle of the day to do things that seem like plumbers and those trades, I think that they probably think we have trade school education level. Because I would associate ourselves in the same locations at the same times as those people.
Okay. Ebony, do me a favor, next to education, make 2 columns and make one public and the other clients. So let me go again. How many of you think, in the general public, they think that the typical surveyor has a high school education? So almost all of you. Okay, so I'd say 80%. How many of you believe the general public thinks the surveyor has a 2-year degree?
10.
So about 10%. And how many of you think the general public recognizes a surveyor as being someone who has a 4-year college degree? All right. Go ahead.
I can't speak for the public, I don't know, but my clients think, when I've had conversations with them about what experience I've had or what surveyor experience and training surveyors have, many, if not most of my clients believe that surveyors have a college degree. And when I've been to like parties and social events, when I talk to whoever, somebody new, and I tell them what I do, I generally come across that person believes that a surveyor has a 4-year degree, has a college degree. So I don't know about the public at large, but the people I come in contact, most believe that surveyors have a 4-year degree.
Okay, so go ahead and put 1%. Now, let's ask the same question with regard to the clients that you work with. How many of you think that your clients believe that the typical surveyor has achieved the highest level of education, high school diploma? 0, okay. How many of you believe that your clients believe that the typical surveyor has a 2-year degree? About 5. And how many of you believe that your clients believe that surveyors have a 4-year college degree? Okay, about 95%. Okay, very good. In 1986, 44% of clients believe that surveyors have a 4-year degree, and that was the #1 response. 50% believe that surveyors should have a 4-year degree. Again, this was in the 1980s. Again, we're going to do public and we're going to do clients. How many of you think that the role of the surveyor is what your field crews do? In the general public, how many of you believe that what your field crew does is the work of a professional surveyor? Okay, I'd say about 90% of you. Okay. clients, how many of you believe that what the field crew does is professional surveying? So in other words, your clients understand the difference between your field crew and you as the professional. All of you agree? Okay, very good. In the 1980s, 52% of clients viewed the surveyor as field personnel, 43 viewed the surveyor as the professional who manages technicians. It was 52-43. What's your view on, again, let's take two columns and make one the surveyor and one clients. How many of you think that your clients, well, how many of you believe that the quality of the service that you provide and your fellow surveyors as a profession is excellent? What you believe the profession provides is...
I'm sorry, did you say public or client?
You.
What do we believe that our clients believe?
No, what do you believe is the quality of surveying services offered today to the public, to the market, to America, by the surveying profession? How many of you think it is excellent?
So not just our own, but everybody's.
Everybody's.
My profession in general.
Your profession in general.
Right.
Excellent. How many say excellent? Keep your hand up. Okay. So I'd say about half. How many think it's good? Okay, I'd say about 30%. How many would say fair? One. And how many would say poor? Okay. Now, that's your self-evaluation of your profession. How many of you think your clients rate the quality of work provided by the surveying profession as excellent? Is this a caucus over here in the corner? Great minds think alike, huh? Okay, so let's say 5%. How many of you think your clients would rate your work, the profession's work, as good? That's about 90%. How many would say fair? And how many of you would say the clients view the work of the profession as poor? Okay?
Cost is an influencer to that survey.
I didn't get the cost yet.
I know, but cost is embedded there too. There you go.
Value proposition. Let's just go with your clients. Because I would say that the typical American, if they've never engaged the surveyor, they don't have an opinion or they don't have a basis upon which to have a view on the value proposition. But with your clients, how many of you would say that your clients view what you do as a necessary evil?
This is in general again?
No, your clients.
My clients.
Your clients. Or in general, the clients of surveying services, the users of surveying services. How many of you think that the typical user of surveying services in the American market today views the work of members of the surveying profession as a necessary evil? One. Okay.
But John, it's almost like we need to break that question down into commercial clients or non-commercial clients. Because non-commercial clients, which represents a very large, a very sizable part of the work, they don't really have a sophistication or appreciation for what goes on behind
Right,
field work.
and that's why I'm not distinguishing,
Okay.
yeah, for exactly that point, good point. How many of you believe that your clients place a high value on what you do? Okay, almost everyone. How would you evaluate it? For those of you that have not raised your hand to this questions on value proposition, what's your thought?
There's a person who knows they need to spend the money to get the boundary survey to build their fence or whatever they're doing. And then there's a person who thinks that the price is so out of bounds that they think they're getting ripped off. So, and they're just price shopping. So I don't know what's in their head other than what's in their pocketbook and their budget. And that can be, there's so much bias, it gets back to how we present ourselves to our field crew. Most of my clients see me in the field wearing blue jeans and whatever I need to wear depending on the season. And maybe I give the impression that surveyors wear blue jeans and don't wear ties, and their belief is, their bias is, well, they make a decent income, but if I told them, well, surveyors, licensed surveyors make about $80,000, they would be surprised, because I'm showing up in their backyard with blue jeans and an overcoat on. So anyway, I get half and half.
Okay. So when that homeowner calls you,
I could, but I put them all away.
so when that homeowner calls you and says that your price proposal is out of bounds, do you tell him that that's nothing in comparison to what it's going to cost him if he builds his fence out of bounds?
And we've had that conversation.
Okay. Sir, you didn't raise your hand.
I did raise my hand.
Okay, my fault. My apologies. Okay. Okay. What is it that you think the surveying profession and individual surveyors can and should do to improve the perception and the value proposition and the image of surveyors? Not just the image, but the reality. Where would there be room for improvement? Joe?
I can tell you right away, something to transform this whole profession in under 5 years. So we're at this conference. Was there another group here today? The answer is yes. When we went down to lunch, we saw them. Imagine if every single person in this room had a coat and tie on for this event. Like, you don't know who sees you or what and the reason I'm saying this is because we had an event in Ocean City, and somebody who worked at the hotel came up to me and complimented me on how I look, how professional I look, and that they noticed. It makes a difference how you are perceived. So it was a simple thing. It took me as long to put on a suit today as it did to put on a pair of jeans.
Okay. So personal appearance, improve personal appearance.
Yep.
Let's go ahead and you might be able to tear those off and put them up on the wall. There may be some adhesive on the back. The top of each sheet may have an adhesive.
There's some tape in there.
Yeah, I can split that then. Okay. So improve personal appearance. Other ideas? Ron?
Communication and explaining what you're gonna do in layman's terms, so they fully understand the process that you're gonna go through. So in other words, if they want their property corner set, it's not a matter of just going out and putting in your four corners, it's everything else that you've gotta do to get to that point. Get them to understand that this is time consuming, it's not just going out and spending 15 minutes driving 4 pipes around.
So more fully explaining your services.
Yes.
Okay.
And it goes along with public education of what we do, what's involved in it.
Okay.
The public doesn't know what we do.
Right.
John, to expand a little bit on that, is go even a little further and explain to them that you're helping to keep them out of a problem, to make sure that we do enough work to get arrive at the right answer. You know, so that we're making sure that we do an efficient job and a professional job to get them the right answer that will keep them out of trouble.
Let me step back for a moment. That's a great point, Rick. I'm glad you said that. And I'm sorry, Keith. You made a point before that maybe we ought to stop and and establish a benchmark here. How many of you believe that any misunderstanding or lack of a favorable, positive image is more pronounced with the general public or the homeowner as a client versus your commercial clients? So there's a difference between the audiences we're talking about, correct? That the standing of the surveyor in the eyes of the engineering community, development community, the land title community, real estate lawyers, is much better than the perception or the image in the public in general. We all agree?
Yes.
Okay.
No, not necessarily. I can't. I'm
By
sure
and
that
large?
there are surveyors in this room that have worked with engineers that had no respect for what they did.
They have no respect for what the engineer does, the
No,
engineer has no
engineer
respect for
had-
the surveyor.
had very little respect, if none, for what the surveyor does.
Okay.
I've worked at a few engineering firms where I've had that be the case, so I know I can't be the only one in this room.
Oh, I agree, I think generally that there's a
Is it
difference.
generalization? You're making a generalization.
Right,
Always
yeah,
exceptions.
absolutely.
Okay. So, Ebonique, if you would make a point of that there's a difference between the perception of the general public versus the perception of specific commercial client groups. Yes, sir.
I'd like to segue off this gentleman's comments here, and just by a show of hands. How many licensed surveyors in this room are the principals of a survey and engineering firm?
Principal owner or partner
And it has engineers.
with engineers.
Used to be. Traditionally, when you look at what we did historically, and let's be parochial, let's just take the Baltimore area, because that's where I'm from. Traditionally, it was only surveyors who founded engineering companies. It was never an engineer. And that surveyor, that licensed surveyor, was the leader of that company. I mean, you can start with G.W. Stevens, Evans, Higgins, and Holdor, Malcolm, Huntins. You can go through the whole litany of them. Now what has happened, and I really believe it's us as professionals, it has now reversed, it's gone through the cycle, to where now engineers own the surveyors. And I hate to put it in that kind of simplistic, but that's where we are. And how did that happen? How do we allow that? I have many reasons why, but I think it begins with us.
Let me ask this way. For those of you who raised your hand, so those who raised your hand, you're the principal owner partner of a firm that has both engineers and surveyors on staff and provides both engineering and surveying services. Do you believe that there is pay equity between the surveyors and the engineers? Or
As what? As a profession or as owners? You mean professional?
as owners? Are you treated the same?
Well, I own a company, I do,
All right, let me word it this way. Those of you who are in a multidisciplinary firm, for a PE versus a professional land surveyor in your firm that's not a principal owner partner, is there pay equity between the two?
No way.
I'm hearing a difference of opinion. How many of you think that in that scenario, engineers are paid better than surveyors? How many of you think that surveyors are paid better than engineers in that scenario? How many of you think there is equity? All right. Mark Twain once said, difference of opinion is why we have horse races. Okay, very good. How about, so we're talking about what can be done for improvement. We've talked about personal appearance. We've talked about public education and explaining your services in terms that your clients and the layman understands. Articulating the fact that you are resolving or answering the client's concerns. How many of you would say that there needs to be improvement in the accuracy, timeliness, or quality of the services performed? Nobody.
Well,
In
I
1986,
can comment on just briefly. I
Go ahead,
mean,
John.
if you mean expanding on standards for different services provided, there may be some room for improvement.
No, I'm not talking about standards, I'm talking about standard of care, the quality.
Maybe guidelines?
In the- in the-
'Cause there
in the-
could be, like, if you say the word location drawing, even in this room full of professionals, that can mean, there can be a wavelength of what that means to each
No,
individual.
That's not what I'm getting at.
Okay.
What I'm getting at is, if what the client really wants on that location is plus or minus a foot, by and large, are people providing plus or minus a foot? Or are they providing an inferior accuracy?
I think I'm with
If that location was promised to the client in 2 weeks and he delivers it in a month, is that typical, and is that an area where there's room for improvement? If the quality wasn't what the client expected. So that's what I'm getting at is, as a way of improving the image of surveyors, is improving the accuracy, timeliness, or quality of the services that you provide and the deliverables. That's what I prefer to products. The deliverables that you provide to your client can be improved. You're saying no, that you think the profession by and large is doing a good job. I will tell you that that was the #1 improvement recommended by the clients in the 1980s study. How many of you think that surveyors would improve? Did somebody have something to add?
Yeah, 'cause I thought the question was more, how did we perceive it? If our clients, I mean, there are plenty of homeowners when they call up and they want their corner set or set or recovered for whatever, and they come back afterwards and whatever the fee is. They always, there's an expectation of getting more than just the corner. They want, where's my drawing, where's my this, where's my that? More beyond, even though you had a conversation with them. You know, because they want set corners to be able to do a fence. Well, where's my drawing?
Okay. 2 things. #1, let's remember, we're distinguishing more commercial clients and homeowners, because we understand that there's a big chasm between the perception and the reality of those. And #2, I was just making a correlation. We just brainstormed what a group of 40 surveyors think, and just as a benchmark, I told you what clients thought in the 80s. So, good point, but I want to make sure we all understand the difference here. I am comparing an apple and an orange, and I admit that I am.
And to that point, I think most of the commercial clients, if you're not producing the product they're expecting, you don't have that client for long. So I think we have to hit those metrics.
Okay. Good.
And I would just take issue with the 1980 versus 2018, where development was just expanding off the rails in the 80s, and surveyors and engineers are just trying to keep up. Developers wanted it faster, buyers wanted it faster. Today, development, the process of developing can, in Baltimore County, where the area I'm familiar with, can take 2 years. And you tell the client right off the bat, this is going to take 2 years, and it might cost X thousands of dollars. So they're not surprised that 18 months from now, we're still waiting for comments from the county. Instead of, in the 80s, I worked for older guys who would tell the client anything to get them off the phone. But the number from the 80s, I don't think really is fair to today.
That's why we have the minimum standards. That was partly to address the issues that we had with public perceptions.
You know, there's the old story about this good old boy from Texas who was bragging one day. He says, "Why, in Texas, I can get on a train in the morning and I can ride on the train all day long, and at the end of the day, I'm still in Texas." The guy from Connecticut says, "We have the same problem with our trains in Connecticut." All right, so we talked about you do not think that timeliness, accuracy, quality, that's not an issue, that the profession's doing a good job. How about surveyors improving their business practices? Is that an area for improvement?
Yeah.
Yes? Gee, 2 people from the same firm raised their hand. Now, what's going on here now? Raise your hand. So I got 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So that's one.
I'm not commenting on my firm.
No, and it was interesting because I remember, so in the 86 study, number one, 28% said improve the accuracy, timeliness, and quality. 27% said improve business practices. 12% said improve personal experience, personal appearance. Those were the top three issues. That was 20, 50, 60. The others. The others said improve the education and training. 12%, 11% said improve public relations and information. I remember one of the comments in this report was somebody said, the data that I get from the surveyor is great, but the problem I have is I'm embarrassed to bring a surveyor with me to a public hearing, and I paid all this money and I get this is really in the pre-CAD, pre-digital age, I get this tattered, torn at the edges, scrolled up drawing that I am embarrassed to pass on to my client or integrate into my work. So the quality was good, the presentation of the work and the surveyor is what needed improvement. That was in the 1980s. Okay, anything else for improvement? Okay. A lot of information here now. Homeowners, that's a major client group.
As a major client group?
And I'm not asking anybody to reveal any proprietary information. We're just talking about the surveying profession generally. I'm not going to ask for percentages or anything, so don't feel inhibited or parochial about what you're saying. So homeowners is one client group of surveyors.
Developers or some?
Developers.
Public agencies?
Hold on a second, we're going too fast. Government agencies. What types of government agencies, Mike?
Utilities, highways.
DOTs? Local public works departments?
DOD.
Transportation, DOTs, DOD?
Environmental
DOD,
agencies. Environmental agencies.
Environmental agencies? Natural resource agencies? You've got utilities.
Contractors.
Okay, let's stick with government for a moment, public agencies. Contractors is separate, that's why I'm saying. Anything else under government agencies? Okay. Flood agencies?
Public agencies, you got as far as the state, municipalities.
Yeah, but I'm trying to look at verticals within government so that we're specific. What do you mean by contractors? Construction companies?
Yes.
Construction contractors? Okay. So construction?
Subset highway and then building.
So people who, vertical buildings versus roads?
Versus surface, yeah, transportation.
Defense.
You have defense.
Somewhere in there, home builders in there somewhere, I don't know if it's contractors.
Okay, I put that separately. Home builders is a separate one.
Defense contractor.
No, put a bullet next to, what would you have there?
Defense contractors.
Oh, okay. New bullet, home builders.
Title company.
Title and land use, yeah.
That's separate. Title is separate. Attorneys, land use attorneys?
Yeah.
Architects.
Hold on, slow down.
Well, land use attorneys, real estate attorneys.
Okay, let's go to another page, because I'm running out of room.
You want to have the same conversation with every Harry Hines. Doing the $75 survey.
put clients page 2 on there if you would, everything, thank you. Okay, so architects. Nobody mentioned engineers.
Engineers.
Okay.
Of institutional clients,
Such as,
universities,
okay,
public and
hospitals.
private, hospitals.
So, large campus landowner.
Municipalities?
We already have that under
Okay.
government, we have that under public agencies. Joe?
Surveyors.
Other surveyors? Okay. Okay,
Investors,
I'm sorry?
investors.
Investors. Okay. Explain.
Somebody who, an entity who's buying a piece of property with no intention to develop it, but to hold it as an investment
Okay, so real estate investors.
and sell it later.
Okay.
Trial attorneys.
We have attorneys there.
I thought it said just land use attorneys. Okay.
Oh, okay, so for like, accident reconstruction or?
Expert.
Boundary disputes.
Now the street, yeah.
Realtors?
Not so much in our state, but in some of the surrounding states, logging and mining.
Public utilities.
I think we have.
We have government utilities. I don't know.
We have-
Well, I'm talking about
Like
Verizon and
Okay.
Constellation.
Pepco, BGE, that kind of utility. Do we have industry up there? You know, the oil industry, gas industry?
How about trains and?
Trains and planes and
And
boats,
automobiles.
airports?
Actually, airports, yeah.
Okay. Airport authorities?
Yes, sir. The dots.
Okay.
Banks.
What's that?
Banks. We were doing a lot of work after all the foreclosures of 2008 for banks.
Okay. All right. Now, this is going to be hard to do. All right, Ebonique, if you would pull that one off of the wall and, or off the pad. Actually, put that, yeah, move it over so I can see it, because I'm going to need to read off of that. Thank you very much. All right. Why don't we do it this way? Location surveys. Homeowners? So next to homeowners there, if you would write location.
John, I don't think we call those surveys any longer. The location drawing.
Location drawing, okay?
Good job.
That also applies to home builders.
Okay. I'm trying to think of an efficient way to capture this. Do you have home builders over here? Down here?
Yeah. This is also location.
Yes. Title companies also? For location drawings?
And land use attorneys.
Yes.
Banks.
So location, title, home builders. Okay. What else? Topo?
Utilities.
No, I mean just yes and is Topo a major service that you provide?
Yes.
All right, who are the clients for Topo services? All of them? Okay. So on your notes, put Topo dash all. Boundary? I mean, first, yes or no, and then we'll decide. Okay, so yes, boundary. Title survey? Yeah? And who's that for? What are the major users, clients?
Developers, investors, title insurance companies.
Developers, investors, title insurance,
Attorneys.
what's next? Planimetrics? No? Elevation data? Is that topo, or do you consider that the same as topo?
For elevation,
Could that be for the homeowner too? If they're doing a Loma or, right, yeah. What else? Engineering surveys? Yes? You consider that? I mean, what other categories of surveys? Construction stakeout? Okay. And who do we do that for? Developers, builders, transportation agencies?
Complement that being post-construction as-built.
As a separate type of survey?
It's the back end of this front end, if that makes sense.
Do you always have one with the other, or do
No.
these?
You can do
So
separate.
an as-built would be, or record drawing would be separate?
Yeah.
As-built or slash record drawing? Liability person told me years ago you should never use the term as-built.
It's in our
Call it a
members'
record
standards.
drawing. Have you all heard that? We all call them as-built in the community, but I've been told that's another one,
We should
like
probably change our-
apprentice.
We probably change our minimum standards then.
You can say it, just don't break
He
it.
uses as-built, yeah. Okay. Who are the users and the clients for as-built and record drawings?
Utility companies.
Developers, utility,
Agencies.
agencies, transportation. What else?
Asset inventories?
Okay. And that would be like institutions,
Yeah.
campuses,
Public agencies.
public agencies,
Public utilities.
transportation, utilities. Okay.
Broad term for easements.
Right of way surveying, easements, rights of way. And that would be primarily utilities and transportation agencies.
Developers as well.
Developers.
Yeah, it's-
Anything else? Any other
Some
major?
environmental surveys like natural resource inventories and forest stand delineations?
Okay.
Yeah.
Natural
You
resource.
might wanna just put that like enviro.
Enviro, yeah.
Yeah.
So forest inventory, wetland. That's right. Those are types of environmental, yeah.
oh, these are types.
You're good, yeah. So forest inventory, wetland delineation,
And resource inventory surveys.
resource inventory. Any other major type of surveying service we haven't captured?
Monitoring and forensics.
Okay.
Dare I say aerial mapping, or is that, am I not allowed to say that?
It depends on what state you're in.
Do we have construction stakeout up there, John?
Yes.
Yeah.
The meets and bounds descriptions, I don't know if that falls into any of those.
Is that not part of boundary?
Well, but it's also part of easements or rights of way, so it falls into several, it has its own category in the minimum standards. So.
Okay.
Did anybody say design?
Well, we said engineering surveys, did we not?
Yeah. We did.
What about planning services, like?
I don't see engineering.
It's on the one thing over there.
Okay.
No, we have engineers as a client group, but we don't have engineering surveys as a service.
Yeah, but that falls under all for boundary and definitely.
Okay.
We have marine surveying, John? Okay.
No,
Hydrographic.
marine and hydro. All right, I think we're getting into real specialties here as opposed to the bigger picture of what, most surveyors do. Anything that we missed that's glaring?
Development plans.
Are subdivisions different, or does that fall into something we already have?
I think that could fall into the development plan.
How about like community planning?
Stormwater
Is
management,
that surveying or, no?
Can we do that? Yes. Community plan, they should be up there.
No, that's who typically does community planning or AICPs.
So should I put community plan down?
Put it there with
It's
development.
not a survey.
No, okay. Not a survey? Okay. All right, very good. We've already gone over that. All right, if you could flip the page and so again, I'm not going to try to do this by client group. We don't have the time, and I think we would be getting too far into the weeds. But in your way of thinking, how would we try to communicate a message about surveying to, and let's keep homeowners out for a moment, and let's go to the more specific client groups we've discussed. As a group, not just lawyers, not just engineers, not just developers, but in general.
current or perspective?
So what I'm thinking of is if MSS were to implement an image enhancement, public education, public relations campaign on behalf of surveyors, where would you go to affect the level of knowledge and the impression and the image that your commercial, governmental, other than homeowner clients would be likely to see that message?
John, I gotta imagine, be older, well, new old thinking, but the professional sites, LinkedIn, is a diverse group of folks there, professionals. You're reaching out to all the people that are prospective clients.
Social media,
Okay.
also associations.
Okay.
ACC,
Okay.
homeowners associations.
And all the varieties of that, like the NBIAs, there's various.
Yeah, all the various effective or relevant industry and
Organizations that our
professional
clients belong
associations
to.
to those groups that we just identified.
Yep.
Good. That's a good catch. Jay?
Other trade and professional publications, engineering magazines.
Trade public, as opposed to the association, right, okay, so trade publications. Anything else? All right, that's good. All right, that is the end of what I had prepared. I am more than happy to share these slides with anyone if you wish. Actually, if you want copies of these, I could email them to you. I think we have these scanned. If not, I can easily scan them. So let me know or give me a